Noon, I'd like to call the Budget Committee meeting of Thursday, May 9th to order and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. First thing on our agenda is to appoint a chair and a vice chair.
Madam Mayor, I nominate Sharon Clyde to be chair of the.
I can't.
As a committee?
Yeah, you're on.
And second. Good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion?
I think she's very experienced and did a great job in the past.
What can I do? Okay. Do we need to do a roll call on that? Jen, do we need a roll call on that?
You can just say all in
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? No one? Okay, and then we need to appoint a vice chair.
I nominate Tim.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Sharon and Tim, for accepting those. And then you ready to take it away? Okay. Or do you want me to?
Okay. So then, next on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes from the budget meeting on May 11th of 2020.
The minutes, but 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Okay. Next order of business is the public hearing on the state shared revenue. Public comment on uses of revenues generated through Oregon's Shared Revenue Program. Staff report dated May 9th, 2024. Anyway.
Yes, counselors have a staff report dated May 9th, 2024. It states that state law requires that all cities participate in the state shared revenue program conduct hearings before the budget committee in order to take public comment on the possible uses of the funds. A public notice of the scheduled hearing was posted in the Asturian on May 2nd, 2024. The proposed budget includes estimated revenue from state shared revenues in the amount of $209,660. There's a spreadsheet, I believe it's attachment A, that shows a breakdown of the fund. Staff recommends that the chair of the budget committee conduct a public hearing pursuant to the hearing notice, which is attachment B.
So public hearing, City of Cannon Beach Budget Committee, May 9th, 19. Fast forward, Sharon. 2024 state revenue sharing. At this time, pursuant to ORS 221770, I will open the public hearing in order to give the citizens of Cannon Beach the opportunity to comment on the use of state revenue sharing funds in the city of Cannon Beach budget for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. Yeah, you just did that.
I'm sorry, I did that out of order.
That's okay. That's okay. We got it done. Is there any member of the public wishing to comment on the proposed state revenue sharing for fiscal year 2024, 2025? Anybody on Zoom?
For all
Staff members.
staff members, yeah.
Okay. Okay, there's no further discussion. I'll close the public hearing at this time? Okay. We did that. Okay, now we have public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make public comment on the proposed budget? Okay. Then we'll go to the budget message.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff is pleased to present the proposed budget for 24 year. Oregon budget law, 294.39, requires a budget message to be prepared by the budget officer and delivered at the first meeting of the budget committee. Purpose of the budget message is to describe financial policies and assumptions for the coming year, budget year, and explain any major changes in financial policy or the level of resources, revenues, and required expenditures. Sorry, in the preceding fiscal year. As required by law, the budget is balanced and proposed spending plan for the coming year based on projected revenue resources and operational needs. Combination of ongoing conservative budgeting practices and strong tourism room tax, TRT, revenues sitting in a very positive position going into 24-25. This is reflected in the recent credit rating affirmation from Standard & Poor's, where we are maintaining our AA. That was just a couple of days ago. The biggest challenge for the city in the upcoming year will be the management of the potable water resiliency project, rejuvenation of the Cannon Beach Elementary School site, and construction of the police station and city hall. The water resiliency project is underway, and all three facility projects are anticipated to start construction in the October 24 timeframe and take between 12 months, that would be Cannon Beach Elementary, and 14 months for City Hall and the police department complete. The establishment of the prepared food tax at 5% and the increase of tourism room tax, TRT, from 8.0 to 9.5 makes each of these projects possible without imposing a tax on Cannon Beach property owners. Talking about the police station, shortly into the design process, we became aware of a relatively new state requirement to construct critical facilities like police stations with emergency operations centers to risk category 4 for both seismic and tsunami inundation. The only site the city owns that is completely outside of the tsunami inundation zone, Southwind property on the east side of 101, currently houses the cash site. Cash site is practically given for the location for the police station EOC because of the elevation. City Hall, approximately 15.3 million. After a great deal of consideration of factors such as cost and resident preferences, it was decided to place the new City Hall on the current City Hall site. To accommodate construction, City Hall and police facilities will be located to portable modular units located at the east end of 2nd Street, just west of the recycling center. The construction is expected to commence in the September-October timeframe of 2024 and be completed around the end of 2025. In particular, the City Hall is in a tight urban setting and will require the closing of a short section of East Gower Street for public safety and to maximize construction efficiency. Cannon Beach Elementary, 12.4 million. The Cannon Beach Elementary School rejuvenation will display the best aspects, including ecological, environmental, historical, and art of Cannon Beach for both residents and visitors when it is completed. The facility will play an important role in the social framework of Cannon Beach with its capacity to serve as a community gathering place for residents. Design activities for all three projects have been going on for almost 2 years. We are now at the point of developing construction documents that will be used to solicit bids from subcontractors. We anticipate the bidding process to start in the early summer and construction around October 2024. Project delays combined with market increases in materials, inflation, supply chain issues, and the cost of financing have significantly increased for both the City Hall, Police Station, and Cannon Beach Elementary School rejuvenation projects over the past 3 to 4 years. Staff has tried to minimize delays in response to these anticipated increases. Even though the current estimates seem somewhat shocking, it is unlikely the project cost will ever be this low again. The city has started the loan process, as I mentioned, and we got our credit rating, which was maintaining a AA, which is the third highest credit rating from Standard & Poor's. We'll talk about a couple other things before Ron and we bring in Rick. Employee COLAs, 3-year contract with both unions was signed in 2021. According to the contract, the 22-23 COLA would have been 2%. However, the relationship between both unions and the city have been positive and mutually supportive. The first budget during COVID, both unions offered to eliminate the COLA of that budget year. And that spirit of cooperation, it did not seem fair to move forward with a 2% COLA. Some sections where the cost of living were running at 7 to 8%. Based on that, the 23-24 budget was put together with a 5% COLA for the bargaining units. We are currently in negotiations with both unions and should have some results to bring to council probably in the next month or so. Something that we need to note is that recently the lack of qualified workers available due to the cost of housing in Clatsop County, local cities started poaching workers from other cities. Much of that practice was centered on pursuing employees that already had certifications and need for utility operations, which includes our utility workers and our police officers. That's all I have for right now. If anybody has any questions on any of those items, we'll go to I'll ask Rick to come up and talk about emergency management. Any questions?
For Bruce?
Yes, paragraph at the bottom of page II was omitted in the report. For the first year, you still agree with the increase at the bottom page II.
What about the process Standard & Poor's?
Expect the funding to be in hand in late May. No, I don't believe even yesterday that was true. But
Actually, the day before yesterday it was true. But you're right, we've had some changes. And so I would say that it's possible it would be early June, but there are many things that can be sorted through before we just make the decision to start that process. It's a good correction. Thank you.
Any other questions for Bruce? Okay, let's have Rick with the emergency management.
Chair Klein, could I also point out that at the time this agenda went out, this was the order we had intended, but we had one of our department heads unexpectedly had to leave town. So, and that's Karen for Public Works. So our intent today was maybe to get through everything else, if that's how it goes, doesn't have to, and then have Karen be on the 16th. So Rick is item 5 on this agenda. So after that, we'll skip to item 23.
Okay,
Karen also has one other spot further down in the agenda. So whenever, I'll let you know when we get Karen.
okay.
Skip that. Thank you.
After
Rick is first.
That get put up on the screen. There is one item that I should have mentioned. There's one staffing addition in this budget, And that is the Cannon Beach Elementary School Executive Director. We're putting in a part $50,000 because we anticipate it will just be a partial year. But we do want to hire somebody early, I'm sorry, the middle to late construction frame to make sure that all of our programs can be put in place. And that sort of thing to make sure that we really go. So this is just a placeholder right now, but we'll be talking about that actions will be taken in the future. Thank you.
Can you tell me what page we're on? 42.
Are we on the executive summary or are we?
We're going
42.
with Rick.
I would say go to 42. I've got a quick slide presentation to explain a few things, which will make sense once we start talking about that page. I believe that's the right page. Is that right, Ron?
It is correct, 28.
Did you say 42 or 28?
I think 42.
I beg your pardon. Yeah, I was looking at next page 42.
Thank you, council and committee. I appreciate you guys having the time for taking time to listen to all these things. What I wanted to go through today is very brief. It won't take long at all, but it needs to be a little bit of an explanation of where we've been over the past 5 years to make it really clear of where we're going in the next future here. So this is going to be the 24-25 budget. One thing that's interesting, that's difficult to explain about emergency management is really the fact that it covers all disciplines within the city in some capacity. So it does cover mitigation efforts, preparedness, response, and recovery, and the cycle never ends. It keeps moving forward, and you have to build a good foundation in order for you to make advances in the forward motion. A lot of agencies don't choose to dive into this discipline very deeply, and so they never get a great foundation and they never get off the ground. What we've done over the past 5 years is actually a really, really heavy lift that we were able to build. So when you look at those things, even the conversation we had the other night with Dagami, those are part of the mitigation and planning efforts that you start now, that you look in the future, and then you keep that ball rolling. So that's how you create resiliency. If people ask you, how do you do it? Resiliency is all about infrastructure that's built on a foundation that you keep building and adding to. And there's course corrections throughout that. So as we get for the past 5 years, I remember sitting here in 2019 with everybody, and I specifically had a question from Brandon about how much is this going to cost and how long it's going to take to build it. Well, it costs quite a bit of money. The lift is over, and we are now at a point where we're done with these hard costs. And I want to describe what these hard costs have been over the past 5 years. We've improved the public safety with police and fire relationship with the city. If you look at even now, and it's a big emergency management project to get all the public safety people, that's the county, the neighboring cities, the unincorporated county areas, the police department, the fire department, all with the framework of understanding how they're going to work together in a network with the city. That's emergency management at a core. And I think everybody would agree right now, especially the fire district, where are they now than they were in 2019? We are not only having discussions, we're now partnering in all these projects, and they are growing and advancing. Police station or police department is actually advancing. We got a new police chief coming, but we also have code enforcement officers that are more routinely and consistently in track. All those things are happening. And so those are great emergency management advancements that we've had. We've built a communication system. The communication ability in the community to have us work internally was really non-existent. And now we have a whole system and a hub that works for us. We built 4 resiliency hubs from 3 dark sites to 4 green sites that are not only advanced at a high level, they're also the model for the state. State has a $10 million resiliency hub grant that is in place right now that just started and has been launched a month ago. It was all based on our resiliency hubs. All the typing that went to those state hubs came out of our community. We built 2 emergency operations centers. We've also made the resiliency hubs able and capable to communicate with each other and network with each other. We created a community notification system with where we didn't have one in the past. And so that needs some work, but overall we've established what that framework looks like. We created an emergency volunteer program. We also, in that emergency volunteer program, they've had over 5,300 hours of service last year, which was over $300,000 worth to the city. We have a community outreach program that's actually even going door to door in neighborhoods. That needs to be bolstered, but overall, we have created that with Know Your Neighbor, and we're bringing neighborhoods together. Some of those Know Your Neighbor meetings that we have, the good thing about it is we do it for our own purpose, but a lot of the neighbors are meeting each other for the very first time in those meetings that we're holding together as a group. We're very proud of that process. We're looking forward to that continuing. And in the connection with the county and state officials, we've worked with not only the local cities, but the unincorporated areas, but the state officials at the level to where they've grown as a state agency coming out of the COVID and the 2020 wildfires. They all know what Cannon Beach has been doing, and they're using it as a model, and they're trying to get that model to go up and down the coast and into the frontier areas. And that's very important that we stay in touch with them, because as they make advances, we can also make advances on those foundations. And then over the past 5 years, one thing that's made this happen is we've been able to receive over $750,000 in grant funding. If you don't have people at the helm with that strategy trying to get these grants, these things don't happen. And so a lot of the money that we've had in big budgets for emergency management, we've been able to give back to the general fund, and we've been able to make drastic progress, all because of that grant funding has come in and we've been able to get our hands on it. Right now, we still have $200,000 grant funding added to this that might come in the next month or two. So what does that make it for us and where we are on the budget and what's our city look like? We're transitioning. We're going from a hard cost physical lift build, which was done, which was extremely extensive. Now we're getting to more of the soft costs. This budget represents actually a 30% reduction in the overall budget from the previous year, but it needs to have diligence to stay on track. We're going from those hard costs of building buildings and building communication systems and all those things that require a lot of grant funding to do, to soft costs of mostly managing the systems and developing those systems as they come to fruition off that foundation. And that's what we need to do. And then we also need to get into long-term planning goals. We were talking a little bit about some of the things that we need to stay on track with, and we need to keep those long-term goals moving forward. So that's the transition that we're in right now. So what's the next steps for the program? We talked a little bit about long-term planning effects. We have an emergency operations plan, which is outdated right now. We have a new plan starting in July. That plan is a $150,000 grant funded plan. So 2 years ago, the cities of Warrenton and Gearhart were able to get grant funding to go and do a new EOP. This last year, we were able to get award, and also the other cities that were awarded were Astoria, Seaside, and Clatsop County. So we're all going to do it together. And we're going to do that process, and it's going to give us a much better emergency operation plan, not only for our city, but for the county. What's going to come next with that is a recovery plan. You can't really have a recovery plan really until you have a good emergency operations plan in place. They do go together. You really can't start one without the other. So the EOP plan is going to come first, and then the recovery plan will kind of come out of the ashes of that. Then we have other things that are just on the horizon, like the First Street Bridge, implementing the CAL system a little bit more effectively and making that more of a regional concept to where it's done a lot more professionally and people see that for what it can be. With that being said, there has to be some continued efforts that we still have a lot of work to do in it. One effort that needs to be is maintaining the current assets that we have. We have probably about $1.5 million of assets. That's not what it costs, but that's what the value is of our emergency management program. And that's those 4 resiliency hubs, the EOCs, the communications network. Those things need to be maintained. And then we need some community outreach assistance. We need to get this information out to the community to where it changes the culture of safety. I think we've actually done an incredible job over the past 5 years. And I think our community is very safe, but it really comes down to the visitors and the influx of people who don't have that education. How do we change that? And that's things that I'm trying to change at a state level. And how does that trickle down to a local level? I'm not sure how I'm going to be effective in that, but it has to start locally. And I think we do a good job of that, but it has to be improved. And then the emergency volunteer management program. This just last year, we started covering our volunteers with insurance where they're not taking risks out there with the amount of work that they're doing. And other cities and the county are now starting to pay attention to that. And they're starting to think about the concept of covering their volunteers. But we're already doing that, but we have to track that. There's a management process with that. And then succession development. You have to have more people involved in this program in the future that know how to operate these systems and can keep that foundation nice and clean. It's kind of like parking a car in a garage and never touching it for 2 years. Tires will go flat, gas will go poor, all the rubber will crack and break. That's not a good way to run a good program. So that eventually needs to be something that we work on downrange. Okay, if we can get to page, what is it, 42? 42. I'm gonna talk about the changes in here, and I'm not gonna go line by line. I don't think that you guys want to hear all those line by line advantages, but I do want to go by some of the highlights. So I'm gonna go in the middle of the page and I'm gonna look under utilities. When I first got here and we didn't have a line item for utilities, and we were spending a lot of money on satellite usage because we had 11 satellite components that were costing $120 a month, and nobody was using these. And that's okay. That's what was happening. Well, we've changed all those things, and we've got it very efficient with our utilities. And so each one of our sites that we have, we've got power to those sites. We have internet to those locations, and we know what those monthly bills are. And now we can put it into a projected budget, so we're not just paying something and not knowing what the value is. So that's where that utilities are. Out of those utilities, we also have some backup redundancy with Starlink. We have multiple Starlink applications in the city here, and we're very proud of that opportunity because when I first started in 2019, those applications to get some of those satellite backup systems were in the $150,000 and $200,000. Now we've got those things down to a very marginal technological advance. And we've already paid for those things, and we just pay a small monthly bill of like $120. So that's all factored into our utilities. Cache site preparation, there's kind of a big number. If we've already built the cache site, well, then why do we have to have a big number in there? And it really comes down to the retrofit of what's happening at the police station location. That's going to be a big lift, and there's a lot of money in that challenge. And I don't want the future to say, well, we can't move it or we can't complete that site because there's not enough money in the budget. That site was developed with a lot of grant funding. And so you have to make sure it's maintained and it has to go, or you have to give that money back. And so I put some money in here to make sure there's a little bit of room to make sure that there's extra people or extra reserves for us to make sure that that does get completed. Plan development. Once again, I talked about the recovery plan and the emergency operations plan. And that project development, as our plans get improved, we have to have the ability to take those plans and get them out to the community in a certain way. So I have project development in there of about $50,000 because it's unknown. Now, if I can go chase grants and get some more grant funding for a new recovery plan, that's what my goal is. But then I want to make sure we don't miss out on doing that. As we go down a little bit forward, we have some of our emergency teams like Sunset Empire Amateur Radio Club. What those members are doing for us are not only maintaining the system that we have at a zero cost, but it's also the network that surrounds us. I just sent out an email yesterday. They finally built that little orphan container and it's going to be moved. They paid for all that. But what that's going to do up on that site is bring us possibly a digital network backbone from Megler all the way up to Onion Peak and then down here into Canton Beach. That's going to give us some redundancy to where we don't have to worry about some of these expensive, processes that happen and you have a zero cost in the future. So they're invaluable. And we also have some numbers in there that come down for just basic numbers of bringing some more training in the community, some maintenance of our CERT team, Medical Reserve Corps, maintenance of the COWS system. That's something that was never really done by the fire district. And that's why the system has to be rebuilt the way it has to be, is it was never had a maintenance budget that was actually exercised. We want to make sure that that money's in the budget. So what you guys are looking at is basically a lower lift, not something as heavy, but something that has to be maintained in a foundation. Any questions about all that stuff that I just hit you?
The cache site prep, that 36,000, did I hear you right saying that that's covering the cost of moving that on the police station?
Not entirely. That's going to cost a lot more. Believe it or not, moving those whole sites will probably cost about $50,000 each time we move them. So that's why we want to move it once instead of move it twice. But if there's not enough money in there for whatever reason, like here's an example. The current Tango building that's out there, the actual wood structure, the police need that for part of their supplies in order to have a smaller footprint as a police station. Well, then we have to pull everything out of there. I'm assuming that 2 Connex boxes will fit that. if I have to get another Connex box, because there's a lot of equipment in there.
Yeah.
I may have to add more to the whole thing, and I want to make sure that there's not a misstep of not enough resources to cover that ahead of time.
So if doesn't cover the whole cost of the move, where else is the money located in the budget?
That's not in this budget. That's part of the
Project.
bill.
Project,
Police station.
Probably what?
working it, trying to work it from the project budget.
Okay.
Currently in this fiscal budget, I have $60,000 that's going back to general fund, and I stopped spending money to make sure that that had enough money to get back to the general fund possibly for that.
Okay.
Great question. Yes.
Rick, a couple of questions. On the grants you mentioned, who's the grant writer?
Well, some of them are myself, and then we use also Crest as a backup. They support me quite a bit. So instead of us having a grant writer internally in the city, we pay Crest to do some of the heavy lifting and work some of the grants for us.
And on the idea of insurance for volunteers, I assume previously the city was just indemnifying them?
Nothing. We actually assumed all their disciplines in the past were covered by a national CERT team or the National Medical Reserve Corps. We had basically been told that that's the way it was. Last year, we discovered nobody was covering anybody. And it put the city at drastic amount of risk by having these volunteers out there working and doing anything without any coverage.
Did we look at the idea of covering them just with a city indemnity?
I'm not really sure about that. We contacted CIS and we asked them what are the different options for covering them. And believe it or not, the least expensive and cleanest way to do it was to give them workman's comp insurance once they were working.
Oh, so it's basically a workman's comp.
It's basically a workman's comp, and it was surprisingly inexpensive. I didn't
This
feel,
is to cover injuries to them, not liability issues.
correct, correct.
I understand.
Yeah.
And finally, utility ISP backbone, you mentioned we have Starlink as some backups. What is our primary ISP backbone?
I'd have to ask Rusty about the,
We have Spectrum to most of those sites.
yeah,
We have coax.
yes, now I know what you're talking about. I don't always understand the language.
Actually, we only have one Starlink and that's out at Whiskey right now.
Yep, and then we have a backup at the EOC.
I just, Madam Chair and Madam Mayor, you know, in so many cases, we have employees who step up and pay more than their own way in grant writing. Rick is not the only one, but some level of commendation or recognition certainly seems.
Rick, is coastal outside alarm system, the COWS system,
What's your question?
the line item coastal outside alarm system, is that COWS?
It's the counts, yes,
60,000 was the budget last year
correct.
and 8 this year. Can you just
So-
briefly tell us the status of it?
Yeah, the status is the system does work. We have all the equipment here in the city. And what we're waiting for is the electrical contractor who's a master, not contractor, yeah, electrical contractor. He's a master in Washington and Idaho, and he's trying to get his masters here in Oregon. And it's proving very difficult. He's had a difficult time passing that test. And I guess there's like a 93% failure rate. I did not know this. So he's working on getting that done, and it does take a period of time to fail a test and take it again. So he's trying to get that certification so he can certify all of the COWS systems once they do the big retrofit on them, which might happen next month. And that's what that's for. We have all the equipment. We're just waiting for him. If he can't get it in there before the end of the fiscal year, he's going to hire another electrician to come in and complete the work and be satisfied with it. But he's waiting to do all the work. So right now the system does work. We push the button, it's going to activate. The problem is we got a new controller, and since it's not completely redone, we don't want to have a malfunction and have the alarm go off when it shouldn't. So that's why we don't test it every month, but it does work. Great question, though. That's what that's for. And hopefully, once we get it down to a retrofitted to where everything's kind of been upgraded and updated, we should easily be able to maintain the system indefinitely.
Will you do a monthly test then?
As soon as we get that retrofit finished. Anything else?
I have a question. The communications allowance went way down.
Mhm.
Is that because you
So we built it.
did and you,
We built it. So what we did is we put, not only did we build a radio system for each cache site, but we have three emergency operations centers that we built out entirely. I used the Sunset Amateur Radio Club to actually build each one of those units. So you have boxes that have battery backup that you basically use, and you talk to police and fire. Also ham and GMRS is what we use internally for all of our volunteers. So we built one of those for each area where they can stay interconnected, and we did that lift. So you shouldn't see another large communication cost for that type of equipment again. And all that equipment's meant to be mobile. So the new police station and the new city hall, all that equipment's gonna come back to here. Those locations.
did your cell usage, did that go to a different, it's zero for this year. It was 600.
Oh, I don't like to carry my phone, so.
Did you give up
I
answering?
didn't just give up on it. I still have it. I'm not really sure why that didn't happen. Lori and I talked about that. It's like, why isn't that in there? We never just addressed it. It's a good question.
I made an assumption it just went into utilities.
It could, I mean, it kind of covers that, but it should be it should be in that box. I don't know what that cost is monthly.
Any other questions for Rick?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Twenty-three.
Yes. Thank you. That's me.
Okay,
So, as most of you know, after the finance director Lori Sowry retired in January, she was retained by the city to prepare this budget. And so she used a method that was very consistent with the way she had prepared this budget in the previous, I believe, 7 or 8 years. So I'll just go over some of the highlights in the general fund. That's these the 3 sections, and the first one is on page 28, and these are the general fund revenues. No surprises here, really. The methodology that she uses for our largest income sources, which transient room taxes. She takes the most recent actual figure she has, which in this case is 22-23 fiscal year, and increased by 3%. For the new tax that just came online, the 1.5% additional increment, that's new. So that's just based on the same assumed rate of gross taxable room revenue. We're just applying another 1.5%. So that's the bulk of where this revenue comes from. If you want to see the top 10, which she has provided in the past, that's on page 14. And it shows you the top 10 sources in the general fund. Just kind of interesting to look at, but again, there are no surprises. This is fairly consistent from year to year. You're wondering why you don't see prepared food tax. That's because it's not in the general fund. It has its own fund, but otherwise, these are consistently our top 10 revenue sources.
What page is that?
14.
As I recall, that also does not include the RV.
Correct. Yeah, this is just general fund. This presentation of the top 10 is just for the general fund.
Yeah.
Um,
I've never quite understood why that doesn't flow through general fund.
the planning piece. Is that what you were asking about?
No, the RV park.
Oh, the RV park.
We've had it for a long time.
The RV park is its own fund as well. It's, I don't know why that is long ago, but, I think just so you could track it, it's kind of like an enterprise fund. It's kind of its own little entity.
No, I get why that exists. We just don't count it as a top 10 revenue source, even though it is.
Yeah, I don't know why she has not historically included that in the general fund. I think maybe it's because it's its own separate fund. but not sure. You can certainly have it included if the committee wants that. Or a different presentation in the future for sure.
So Tim, are you just questioning why? Or that you would like a top?
A methodology that I've never understood. It's an ongoing thing until we decide it isn't. And it's meaningful. I mean, it would be number 3, tied for number 3.
Right.
So I like transparency in approach. This does not seem transparent to me.
Anything similar to RV fund? Or is that kind of the exception, unrestricted funds?
Well, as I said, I think what she was trying to do, it says top 10 general fund budgeted revenues.
So this is revenue that goes into the general fund.
Yes.
I don't know that the RV part,
Transfers, they have to do transfers.
Yeah, the RV park, as I said, is not part of the general.
Right.
So I think it's transparent. I mean, it says right above what it is. But
It's a transfer of $300,000 to the general fund. So I don't know why that's.
Oh, the transfer into the general fund. She does not include transfers. It says right there, less transfers. I don't know why. She says total revenues, less transfers. I think what she's trying to do is just show what the actual revenues are without transfers. I don't,
And
I'm
transfers
not sure why.
every year. Transfers.
They do,
So,
they
you know,
do.
You can't, it's hard to tell, I would think, to put it in the.
We budgeted
Yeah, it's a budgeted thing, but it does vary.
$300,000 for this year, so we knew that's what we were going to transfer in all year long. It's not the least bit uncertain. And the city operates a business. That's unusual in and of itself. And then to not sort of have transparency about where that business is on the hierarchy here, I just would raise that question.
Well, I kind of agree with you because, it is a business, but its profits come to the general fund.
And
After
$300,000.
all said and done, they do all their accounts but then we always get money into the general fund. So
The profits that aren't reflected here, but transient room tax would be reflected from the RV park.
Yeah, again, I don't know why she chose not to include transfers in this historical presentation that she has done, but for whatever reason she did. We certainly look at the RV park when we look at that fund in and of itself, and we look at all the ins and outs there, and we will later today, if we get that far.
But there's nothing else of that kind of significance that,
Not that I'm aware of, but I'd have to take a look, but
how does the committee feel about going forward, that it would be included in this?
it's more like adjusting this report,
Yeah, in this top 10.
and potentially looking at transfers.
It
is significant.
It appears in our quarterly financial reports, which presumably are the basis of what the public looks at. So I do find it less than fully transparent.
I'd like to know the reason why it's not included. That's, and then go from there.
I can see if I can get a hold of Lori and if she's willing to answer that question, but you can also just ask Tim to include it in the.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if there was I would like to know if there's a specific reason first. And and then move forward with including it or not including it, depending on if there's,
Do you want me to ask Lori why she did not include
you
transfers
can,
in this presentation?
I'd be really curious.
And in the quarterly presentations that go out to our citizens.
And can I ask you, what is parking lot maintenance? What is that?
That is a program that was started a long time ago where people that did not have adequate parking downtown primarily paid into a fund
Oh, okay.
as kind of a
So
way to help with the upkeep of the on-street parking spaces. They bought.
Quote unquote,
Okay.
parking spots.
and still are, obviously. Yes, okay. And land leases.
We do have I'm aware of a couple. One I'm aware of is a pump station at the Stephanie Inn. They pay the city for a chunk of land where they have I'm not exactly sure what they have there, but, and then there's another,
There's some cell phone towers.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, there's there's a few little pieces of land that
okay.
city leases every month. They're not very significant, but. Okay. Yeah, I hope Lori will still talk to me. Find out. I'm continuing back with, are we exhausted page 14, the top 10, or are there other?
We've exhausted.
10.
Back to page 28. Briefly for resources. I just wanted to point out, like I said, everything's fairly consistent. We are anticipating at this time a shorter farmers market season because of our construction plans. I mean, that's not significant dollars, but if you're wondering why it's down, that's the reason. Also, I believe interest income is budgeted at 300,000. You see that in 2022-23, it was actually 415. So I think that's a very conservative budget. I'm not quite sure where Lori got that number, but I would anticipate that to be somewhat larger. Any questions on this resource page? And as Rick said, you can see that the grants at the end, most of which are related to emergency management, are kind of done because we're in a maintenance phase now and not a build-up phase for that department. There's no other questions. We'll go to page 43. This is the non-departmental general fund expenses. And this fund, as you probably recall, is a place where we house all the shared expenses that are allocated from the general fund departments such as IT, executive, finance, central services, et cetera. So that's where these are how they're allocated based on a method of total expenses, I think. And then these are where the transfers appear, the transfers out from the general fund. We usually have to make a transfer to the debt service fund to help supplement the original 2022 bond. That was the bond measure that was all kind of put together to save some money.
The GO fund.
Yeah, the GEO bonds, exactly. We also always have to supplement the roads fund. It's just the way it's been for quite some time with the transfer out. And we've also been building our reserve for the last 3 years, 700,000 per year. So we're anticipating doing that again. And we'll see that fund a little bit later on. And the 225,000 you see at the bottom was specifically asked by council to fund a couple of things that are related to the capital project at the police station that they didn't want to include in the bond proceed. So that's what that is. And lastly, the page 45.
I do have a question on,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Back to page 43.
back to page 43. Transfer to the Bridge Reserve Fund. Is this the $3,300 for the proposed budget this year? Is that in addition to the 120,414 from last year? Adding-
This is the 120,414 was the budget for last year. I'm not sure what the actual was. But that's related to, I think, and this project is probably over and maybe just has a little bit bleeding over, but that's from I believe it's the First Street Bridge seismic study to determine whether it needs to be retrofitted or rebuilt or what. So that's just a little, I guess she was anticipating a little bit of residual into the next fiscal year.
Well, as I understood it, it was the Bridge Reserve Fund was actually to reserve enough money in the future to rebuild the bridge, or it was not part of the seismic.
Yeah,
And-
that was my.
Yeah, because I think it was you that suggested it, you and Marty.
Yeah.
And so so does this mean we are only going to have $3,300 in that bridge reserve
I
fund?
think I'll defer this to Karen because when Karen talks about that fund, she can tell you the whole story about.
Okay.
What the plans are for that, what's coming out of the reserve for the bridge fund and also the project that I just referred to,
Okay.
which I assume was coming out of that. But if it's going to, I don't know what else they would have been spending that money on
Well, I think it was
this year.
during the Wendy Higgins, and Wendy was on the city council and she really wanted to have, you and I think you were on
Yeah.
the budget committee. And they really wanted to have that bridge reserve fund for future rebuilding of the bridge, remodeling or rebuilding of the bridge. And I think we pretty
Well,
much
yeah, and it
stopped.
was when we took it over from the state.
Yeah.
We thought, okay, we've got to start saving some money
Yeah.
because this is an expensive project if it goes.
Yeah, and like I said,
if the bridge goes bad.
I didn't look this year at the actuals to see what that actual number is, but for whatever reason, the previous 2 fiscal years, we didn't make any transfer.
I know that
So if that was a program, it maybe no longer is.
now that we're starting to talk about it again, we might want to start thinking about adding more money.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good,
Fund is on 112.
right, and we,
The ending fund balance is 117,000. The
Okay.
capital outlay in 2024 was 33.56. I'm assuming that's that budget number. 33.57 is about the same
Yeah,
number.
okay.
is it possible that last year you guys had this conversation again and wanted it funded, wanted that reserve starting to be built up? I don't recall it in the minutes, but
I don't think we talked about it
I
at all.
wasn't on last.
Yeah, I
year,
don't
so
think we talked about it at all. It's one of those things that kind of went by the wayside because we figured
yeah.
we didn't need it, but now that we're starting to talk about it again, we might want to consider.
Yeah, I think on the 16th, make sure that you ask Karen about that.
Before we leave 43 run, the contingency 15% of expenditures. I see that was, I don't remember that from last year, and it doesn't appear that it existed before that. Can you describe what that would be? That's a very big number.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, because I just now see my note to talk about that before we leave this page. And you'll see this throughout the budget, that all contingencies are 15%. I think we're 10. And this is something that was decided, Bruce, perhaps you recall, it was a discussion just to do this across the board in the budget to build some resiliency into the uncertainty of the budget. And we were finding that in some cases, the 10% contingency was not quite enough. So at some point that decision was made. So you'll see that 15% throughout.
There's one exception. What was it?
There might be an exception or two here and there.
There was one exception and we'll talk about it next week. One was still 10, and I think it's in the utilities.
But describe to me a scenario where this contingency would be spent.
Well, there's an infinite number of possibilities. I don't know. I can't think of an example, but in other funds, there's certainly lots of examples. In this particular fund, you might have to make a transfer to a different fund that you weren't anticipating. We had some budget transfers this year. I think this is when this came up.
We had several in utilities, and it can be something like Baylor at the recycling yard. We weren't planning on it, and all of a sudden it's like $45,000 or something. And when we went to the contingency was not quite enough to cover it. Or, I'm sorry, the budget was not quite to cover it. So we had to go in and we do a budget transfer. And the staff can't access the contingency. It has to be done through the council.
It's just a very big number here when there aren't a lot of market forces attached to page 43. unless I'm misunderstanding what it is.
No, not in the non-departmental fund, there isn't.
So is there a good justification for 15% in this particular area? You know,
I mean, I don't want to have an opinion. You know, like I said, I wasn't involved in making the decision but you know, I can see, I don't think it's uncommon to see a 10 or 15% contingency. According to Lori, it had been 10% for quite some time. I do know that, like Bruce said, if the contingency is there, you can spend it without authorization
And it's,
council.
I think it's in
But-
best practices to
Then,
do that. And Lori likes to be very.
Very conservative, and I think
Very-
that's why I laid out her methodology, how that's been and how it still was for this year. I mean, you can obviously do whatever you want, change whatever you want, which is why you're here, but I also know that Lori also had a tendency to, when she was using the 10% contingency, she would sometimes put, if there was like, let's say it's a capital project fund, she would put all available fund balance as though it were going to be spent in the current year, when you know it's not. But it just then allows you that flexibility.
It's available.
Don't have to go through some risk project.
Yeah.
And then it just gets carried forward. So I don't know whether that plays into it so that maybe we don't do that and instead we just have a 15% contingency. Because in some cases, her contingency would be the whole thing. Like it'd be the whole project cost. And we thought, we know that's not going to happen. Let's just do 15% because it's kind of deceiving when you look at it. It looks like you're going to build that capital project in 1 year when you know you're not.
yeah, I'm wearing my bias here, which says we build our reserve every year. $700,000 is a very large number. We are doing a lot of things that exhibit financial conservatism, and that's all good. But in this particular account, I don't see a lot of market forces, a lot of winds of change that would require a contingency.
But what I'd like to do is get back to you on the 16th on that.
Right.
Because I can't recall, taking them off my head, but I know that we've had several instances where we had to go to council to be able to fund a project. I think that the restrooms was one, and we've got some other projects too. So let me go back and look at what those transfers. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else on 43? The non-departmental?
I'm wondering about the $700,000 transfer to the general fund reserve. We have 3.1 in there right now, so we expect that'll be
3.8.
3.8 something
Mhm.
At the end of next year. Is there a goal there or
That is a
best practices for?
No, except the more the better, I guess, if you're a city, because that's really your rainy day fund. That's really your savings account. And that is, I think it's prudent to build it. I don't know what the right level is. I mean, maybe there's a standard that says, 20% of your annual budget or something out there. We could look into it. But it has been a goal, I think, of Lori, even if undirected, to improve that position so that you're healthy.
And you've done, I mean, it seems like it's been yearly for a while.
Yeah, like I said, this is the third year of it.
I like it. I think it's great.
Yeah, and
Do.
I think everyone likes the fact that we can do it.
Huh?
Not all cities are as fortunate.
Yep, it's,
I think there's someplace in a document that says that the goal is to transfer $300,000 a year. And then when I got here, I wanted to try to make it, we were able to do 700,000, so let's try to go ahead and do that. And I'm sure that there are numbers that we can go ahead and say, well, you can go ahead and hold it here and you're probably going to be okay. That is where we go to for any issues that we're having. So
I just wondering if there's some best practices as far as a percentage of revenues or a percentage of expenses, where that gives you some kind of target of where you want your general fund.
We can do some research into that. I mean, there's several sources that League of Oregon Cities might have some information on what, if there's a agreed upon target for that. But I think the answer will be as much as you can.
And that's, I think that's my position, as much as
I
you,
don't think that's a bad thing.
yeah, I agree.
Well,
I
let
mean-
me take the contra on that. We're borrowing $34 million. And for us to have the general fund, reserve fund, and then go out and borrow money, a business would not do that.
No, no.
So are we being as business-like as we should? There's a certain level of prudence.
Well, I wouldn't say a business wouldn't do that because a lot of times a business keeps its collateral. I mean, keeps its cash, its whatever, gets a loan, uses that as collateral. They borrow against their own money when they could be doing it without interest, but they feel they need to have that cash in case something came up. They do that.
Spent a lot of years in mergers and acquisitions. I never really saw that except where companies thought they might go bankrupt and then they kept the cash.
Well, a lot of people just don't like to spend their own money. Anyway,
Capital asset pricing model says. the
Yeah,
money you borrow
I know, but-
Spend the money you already have.
Maybe an answer to the best practice.
okay, it's one thing I know that
For us to-
Cory was always concerned about, and it was, I think, from League of Cities or a budget seminar or something that the city, should something happen, you know, the tsunami, okay, nobody's working, well, now you've got to pay them all their money. So you've got all their vacation, they're sick, they're this and that and the other. You've got to have a reserve to be able to pay that. And I know that at one time, that was a line item. And it was a huge amount of money because, you know, all of their packages, we would have to pay them out. And so that started kind of this, you know, we need to have a big reserve in case something like that happened. I don't think, it's not listed like that now, but it's, you know, it's like when we talk about the tsunami and stuff, we're preparing for that. Well, this is part of the preparation for that because we've got that obligation. And we can't go out and get a loan if we don't have, you know, a working city or a way to pay it back, which we wouldn't have a way to pay it back. And so I think that's.
Well, part of the reason that I tried to get it from 300,000 to 700,000 to build it up is experience with hurricanes and natural disasters. Is that I remember the city of Sanibel, that in order to get to the part of the city, because you had to drive through a forested area, they spent $3 million in 5 days just to get rid of just the trees to the side of the road. And we want to hire people to come in and fix your roads and help you to work on the utilities. Having that cash is a big deal rather than having everybody wait until the federal government reimburses you and, you know, hoping that you did all your paperwork right. So that's.
You'll get the help a lot faster if you've got the cash.
Sure.
to Pay them.
We can go ahead and just say, we have cash. We can hire you if you'll go ahead and come in. So that to me is where it makes a difference. And I'm not, I understand that, you know, we are under the cloud of a 9.0 and then the resulting tsunami. But I'm saying it can be something much less than that. It can cause us a huge, well, we can go through $3 million in a relatively short period of time. And if we don't have that money, then we've got to wait for FEMA, we've got to borrow or whatever. So I always feel that it puts the city in a more comfortable position to be in a strong cash position.
And just because of business, we're a municipality, not a business. So I'm not so sure. I think municipalities operate differently than businesses.
There's a different
You have
mindset.
different obligations.
Right.
Another good reason why you might borrow while you have excess funds is because right now we're making more in interest than we're paying on our bond rates. So yeah, it's just another example of it. I mean, that's only recent in the last year and a half or two, but that's
All stuff.
something else right now.
You adjust for that, yeah.
Have we beat page 30?
It was only a half of a.
Questions about that, but I don't want to keep
No,
bringing it up.
Go ahead.
I just
Now's the time.
wonder how much is enough? And I
Yeah,
understand.
and as I said,
Understand the emergency response and we all make decisions about how much cash we
we have
be in our
it,
checking account or in a savings account and.
Bring that back on the 16th.
we're gonna get back to you.
Okay,
we're getting back to you on that.
If there are any best practices or whatever.
Thank you.
Okay, page 45. General fund reserve that we just talked about, so maybe we're done. Because there's nothing else on it other than beginning balance, the transfer and ending balance. And this is available at council's discretion, but not currently designated for any particular purpose.
Now, when we go to start paying back our full faith and credit bond, we are, part of that funding is reducing the reserve. Is that right?
It's an option, but I don't think it would ever be one that you would have to, given the current financial projections.
Hope we wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in your bag of tricks, but I don't think it.
And I've got to say, just for me, it's just my opinion. I don't really care what best practices are. I like the idea of as much as you can. That's.
So bearing in mind, you're getting this money from businesses and citizens. It's not free.
No money's free.
So you just said as much as you can.
Yeah,
And I would bristle at that if I were, say, objecting to projects that the city is producing.
this is a reserve. This is a rainy day fund. It's for the benefit of the entire community. It is not for the benefit of any particular project. It is for the community in case of an
Saying as
emergency.
much as you can means we're willing to tax you to build an unlimited rainy day fund.
No, I don't think
No,
that's it, Tim.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
That 700,000 transfer is what is left over after the budget and we can transfer that money. We're not increasing anything to put $700,000. It's the,
Definitely increasing the reserve fund, number one. The rate of change has gone up dramatically from $400,000 a year to $700,000. But I'm just reacting to the general statement that it should be as big as it can possibly be because the money is essentially free. We're getting it from tax revenues, and that's not
I
free.
didn't say that at all.
no.
You're extrapolating completely from what I said.
Okay, I think that when that general transfer, that just a transfer from general fund, that is, if I'm correct, you come to that figure after your departments have given you their budgets and you've seen what you've got left over and what you need here, there, and the other. And then you say, okay, we can afford to put this in this year. Is that kind of,
You can prioritize it if you want. You could make that the number one priority and build your budget around that if you wanted. You know, I'm not sure exactly. I know that this fits into the budget.
right?
I mean, somehow that worked fine.
But
When it all.
in the past, I know that, okay, so this figure is in the budget. And then down the line, there's things that, well, I'd like to see more going to this project or this event or this or that. That's where the money the adjustment can be instead of out of contingencies or whatever, that can there's not a resolution that says that has to go in. That's, somebody else could say, we need $100,000 for this. Something that comes up from a department. If the budget committee agrees with it, where are we going to find the money? It can come out of there. It's, but if we don't need it, then we should.
We get what a reserve fund is.
Okay, well, I know that, but I'm saying we're not increasing. The reason that we increase any taxes or any money from the people is for a specific project. It's not to
I don't want to be
money.
argumentative with you, but the size of our enterprise, it's not dramatically increased. The risks that the town is taking has not changed dramatically. But we're going from a $2 million reserve to a $3 and change million reserve over a period of, a year and a half. And so we have said, that we need much more rainy day fund than we had, even though we seem to be happy when it was 2 million.
And all that may or may not be true, that that's enough money, or we need to build it to 500,000 or whatever. That's why I asked the question. But I would say the answer is not the more the better, because none of us keep all of our money in a savings account.
Tim, I don't think there's a limit on, I think I was one of the ones to push to higher reserve number. And again, it was from experience that you can spend that much in a couple of days. And to see that we only had $2 million was a concern to me. And I think that, we don't have as many earthquakes that are impactful like a Hurricane Sue in Florida. But I wanted to be ready in that kind of a situation when to put the city in the best position. I don't think it should go up so that there's no limit to how much you collect. But I think that I would say that if we're at 3.8, I would probably stay close to the 700, at least for a year or two. Say that, with all the things that we're talking about with Rick and the utility work and all the stuff that would have to happen. And remember, we have 3 people in water department and 3 people in wastewater. We're trying to rebuild our wastewater system. We're going to be paying out for it. So those are the kind of possibilities that, right or wrong, I consider.
So you're making a case for closer to $5 million as a reserve would be where
And
you,
we can
and
certainly
that's all
Yeah.
I'm kind of sorry I asked the question.
suggest a limit.
I think it's a good
Potential.
question and we'll get you an answer
Yeah.
to the extent that there are answers out there.
Okay. We'll move on.
If there's no other questions on the general fund reserve on page 45, you can continue on with the agenda.
Next we go to Steve.
So you're finished.
I just finished number 25, Sharon. So
Okay,
is Jason, he's online, I believe.
okay.
Pages.
And that will be page 40 through 41.
I don't know where it is in here.
It's,
Oh, is it the very beginning?
Oh, right there.
yes.
Oh,
So. Whoops. Dixon, ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let's see.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming in on a rare sunny day.
Yeah.
I've got a quick and easy budget for you. This year, we've actually built up most of our items on things that are we pay each year. Larger expensive things like the tasers. Each year we have to pay a fee into that. But I'll just go over the increases to save you some time. And if you have any questions along the way, let me know. The first one would be salaries and wages. That's just a COLA and merit increases. There are no additional positions. We did finally hired that position that we were given 2 years ago. But other than that, that's just COLA and merit increases. Then going down PERS, that's just something that continues to go up each year. We don't have any control on that. social security and the safe insurance, Oregon paid leave, all fit under that continual increase each year. And then dispatch services as well. They usually go up about 3%. We, as a reminder, get our dispatch services through Seaside, City of Seaside, and their dispatch center. So we pay a fee into that. And each year it goes up, usually about 3%. So that's what I figured in. We still haven't heard back from them. They're pretty notorious on not getting back to us when I ask them what the increase is going to be. But we budgeted that in. And then the only other increases would be for a new patrol vehicle. Typically, there's a cost increase. I added a percentage into that, and we also had a return from who we get our vehicles from, and that was the increase. That's it for patrol or police services. Do you have any questions on any of those?
You're not doing the night out, National Night Out?
Yeah, no, that is included under other items.
Okay,
Yeah, it's included
not
and we'll
us.
be
Okay.
setting that up here. We've already registered and we'll be getting that set up for the first Tuesday in August. Thanks for asking.
Any questions for Jason on this?
The next page is the lifeguard budget, and that fits under the transition that we did, all of it going to the fire department. There's nothing additional than the agreement we made with them for that. Part of what we included in that agreement with them was that they take over control of the physical equipment, the surfboards, the vehicle. They had a pickup and also the side-by-side. So they're responsible for all of it now.
Okay, any questions on the, Brandon?
Chief, can we expect that that's what will look like with the lifeguard program moving forward? Or are we still in kind of a transitional period from where it was our
I
responsibility?
definitely think we're in a transitional period. I don't see us paying more. I think if anything, it will go down just because, of course, when you're first getting everything set up, it's going to be higher. But they did really well this year on getting lifeguards. And so I think that they'll be close to full staff for lifeguards. And they started earlier this year trying to get people out on the beach. So I think that if anything, it would go down.
Actually, my question is just format wise, will we see a lot less lines just of
Yes.
the 65 gone, and then we'll rely on the report that the fire department gives us to the degree?
I think we may leave it the way it is or add some lines just for the new chief so that he can be confused. But other than that, it will go down.
You're mean.
Jason, what does the 0.05 FTE reflect?
That's a good term for finance, but I believe it's partial payment of one of our salaries. And so that may be Chris and I helping out to transition the program to the fire department.
That's correct. And each year it takes a certain amount of their time to administer this program, even though they're contracting out all of the expenses to someone else. So there's a certain amount allocated to that internally.
Chief, on code enforcement officers, our schedule or our seasonality the same this year? Are we using them earlier or later?
You mean
I mean, the monitor,
the
the,
traffic?
The bikers. Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, no, it's a seasonal position and they will be starting earlier. I think they're starting here, I think around Labor Day this year. They've already been hired on. We have 6 total, 4 returning and 2 new great applicants from the college. It's pretty incredible that we have so many applicants and we work with the college. And we had to turn down 2 really good applicants too. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, they'll start Memorial Day weekend early, just working the weekends and getting out there, getting visible and going through their yearly training. And then part of your question was the code enforcement, and that's yes, that's seasonal too. He changes his hours during the summertime, so he'll be around all weekend or most of the weekends now to help out with any code issues that come up.
That, it didn't really change the number of full-time equivalents very meaningfully. 0.3 over last year's budget. It's just all lost in the rounding, I guess.
Yes.
Any other questions for Jason? Think it's off that easy?
I'm trying to get you guys out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, overhead.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, now Steve. That's on page 5.
There. Mayor, council, some of the budget committee members I haven't had the opportunity to meet, so nice to meet you guys.
We could tell stories about them.
All right, very good. Mine's pretty straightforward. I'll just go through a couple of the items that have really changed. And they really start at the postage and shipping and the copier expenses. We had budgeted 3,000. I had requested 3,500 because we're starting to do some code audits. And as some of you are aware, some of that's required mailings to every single property owner in the city. And as the code audit continues through the process, it very well, we may be doing that again. The last mailing costs us $1,300. So basically where I'm at as far as my budget for postage and shipping for March of this year, we've used about, it was 48%, but now we use 92% of that. And I'm gonna be over my copying expenses as well. So I had just requested 500. I would, after sending the notice out, could probably use another 500 at a minimum in each of those budgets because I'm anticipating that we're gonna do it once or twice more at a minimum. So that's just in relation compared to, you know, our typical expenses throughout the year. So it's not a lot, but we tried to guess prior to this meeting because we hadn't done it at that time, and I did not estimate enough. Not looking for a lot, but I think we're gonna need just a tad bit more. We added 2 new line items, which are dealing with vehicle fuel and vehicle repair and maintenance. The Community Development Department does have an Explorer that we use for site visits and things like that, and that was not previously in the budget. Asked for some money for some fuel as well as for repair and maintenance. No question, there's some squeaking and there's brakes and there's shocks that I'm gonna need to do something on with that vehicle. So that's why those have been added. Other than that, the biggest one that you'll see is the consultant and professional fees requesting $200,000. At this point in time, we're as of March, it was at 174,000, and last year was budgeted at 130. We have several large cases that are still out there with the Roberts case, Luba. There's been a lot more litigation and need of the attorneys. So that's why that number has been submitted to you with the 200,000. And other than that, that is about the extent of the community development.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Think 200,000 is going to be enough?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. You know, we got a couple more months. We're at 174. I just didn't know where, could it be more? Could it be less? I don't know. But that was, I just thought a fairly significant increase. And I think it would need more. That was what I submitted.
So are these consultant and professional fees? Does this include the Mars?
No, it does not. That is under the code audit.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Which is just above the consultant and professional fees. So that is not included.
yeah.
And the consultant professional fees, that would be like if there's a pending litigation and we have to hire a geologist to give an opinion, that
Right.
thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, Marcy with Herbalsworth right now doing like the code audit and the people she's hiring, but yes, that would.
Right. Okay.
And does that $200,000, does that include like, Bill could buy us some?
Bill Kabizman, Carrie Richter,
Okay,
a lot of the attorneys that we've used for the land use.
Okay.
Appeals
Then I would say that.
situations.
Agree with
like, I don't think it's enough.
Totally agree with Nancy. I think it's not.
I didn't know how much to put in there. 200,000 I thought was reasonable, in terms of the increase. So, I don't know exactly what that number should be, but I think we're gonna likely go over that before the end of even this year.
Yeah.
Well, then we should up it.
Yeah, I think
Because we
so.
know we're gonna go over it,
I agree with you.
so.
Yeah, didn't we make a transfer already, this fiscal year? To cover some of that?
Yeah. We want to just put it in the budget now and be realistic.
Yeah.
And I would say 250 or 3.
Yeah, do you have any kind of ballpark figure, how much?
You know, I went with 200. I would say minimum 2.25.
I think more than that.
I was thinking
50,
100, I think you're right.
50 or 3.
275.
75.
Yeah, that's good.
That would be good.
Okay.
280.
I like,
Once.
I don't know if.
I mean, I hope we don't have to use it.
Right.
Right.
We don't have to use it, that'd be great, but
Yeah.
why not have it in there? Especially
We're already starting to look at some other
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
right now, so.
that, yeah.
I think in a few years, we're gonna need to keep that type of account.
We're gonna end up in the Court of Appeals now, with the Roberts, so.
So,
Like to go to 275, you say?
so
Like to go to 275, you say?
Yeah,
everybody in consensus with that?
Yeah.
Missy? Okay, can that one be adjusted, please?
Sure.
Yes, and while I heard Steve tell you the story about when we made this budget, we didn't know about the mailing to all property owners. And so he already knows he's gonna have another one in the next fiscal year, and so he thinks those line items are also not sufficient. Did you
Okay.
propose a change? Did I hear you
You
say?
know, I got it at 3,500 at a minimum. If I could get it to, you know, like 4 would be great. I think that would cover it. You know, it had for my postage and shipping, I was approximately at 50% of the budget until that happened. So I, you know, it would have been just fine,
He'll need
but,
more.
but I think we need just a little bit more there too.
And copier expense as well.
Yeah, copier
And
and, I'm sorry, what was the other, and postage.
that
so
was
4 for each,
Four for each was,
Yeah. better,
would be better.
okay.
yes.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Given the climate.
Yeah, considering what we're doing with like stuff and all that.
Yeah.
Another 500 should do it. Or, I mean, if you don't think that's enough, you know, now's the time to speak.
You know, all right, sounds good, then. Until I'm not looking
Allowance too?
take more than what I need, but I do believe 45. If, you know, I do, because if I do two of them, I'm at $3,000.
Yeah.
And that's without doing what we typically do throughout the year.
That seems quite reasonable, given that we just glossed over a $1.1 million general reserve 9 days ago.
Okay,
Increasing them both to 4,500.
45.
yes, that would be great.
Good.
Reserve fund to cover any additional.
No, it was, I misspoke. It was a contingency fund, a contingency of.
I knew what you meant.
Leaving aside the reserve fund.
Okay.
When you say glossed over, do you mean, you had asked that we asked, someone asked that we asked Lori why we do that? So
Well-
is there something else we should be looking into?
I'd love to have a game theory it out. Tell me what could happen at that particular
Okay.
budget line where you would have, give me a $300,000 delta. You know, and.
But the action is ask Lori.
Give me a $300.
So the action is to.
Actually, it's just ask Lori if there's a reason.
Yes, we have that.
Yeah.
We have that down. Was there something else?
Glossed it over. We asked a question. And we don't have an answer yet.
And you deserve a right, you deserve an answer to, that will satisfy you.
Okay.
Yeah. Valid.
And it's on the list
Yeah.
to be asked. Right. Yep.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so. Next, your building,
Should I go to building right away?
I think so.
All right.
Anybody, unless there's any more questions on that, no?
What
All right, so with building,
Page.
that one,
is everything in this weird order?
Just the way the budget has. it.
thank you.
It's so crazy.
So the only things really changing in the building fund. We're fortunate to have Alton Butler with us, and this year he's gonna need a couple of code books, so you'll see in the amount, there was a request to up that from the 400 to the 800. I believe both books are approximately about $400 a piece. So that's why I was asking for that increase. And then I did put an additional 600 in the vehicle repair and maintenance again, because his car is in need of a little bit of maintenance as well. And those were about the extent of changes in the building fund.
Is he still filling in for various cities?
Yes, he
On the
is.
coast?
So how much do we have him? What what percent of a job?
Where's his out? Right now, he's coming in on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays.
For the full day?
For the most part, yes, but some of those days, can he go to Seaside and things like that? There are some days that he does go there. But for the most part, and usually it's been Tuesdays and Thursdays, but because of the amount of work that's been happening, he's been coming in Mondays as well.
Have we? You know, I've game theoried out this building fee and the effect that that will have on our building official fund. Taking it well over $1 million of money that we can never get back. I'm aware, in fact, Alton mentioned this to me, that other municipalities actually charge their building official charge their building official for their car and so on. They don't pay those things out of their general fund. They pay it out of the fees. And this is one way we could avoid, taking this $50,000 fund to $1 million. It's not going to mitigate it very much, but have we looked at any of that?
I have not, I certainly can do that. Was something that I had not thought about, but I can definitely look into that, and I could get back to the rest of the committee and yourself and Bruce and see if that's something that we could do. I don't know the answer to that right now. I have not looked at that.
I don't know if it's best practices, but it is a practice. It's something other cities do.
Sounds good. I can definitely research that.
And Steve does, like, when he does use his vehicle and he has to run up to Seaside, he's still using the vehicle we're paying for, right?
Correct.
Well, how does that, yeah.
And I don't know all of the specifics in the intergovernmental agreement between the communities. I'd have to dig that. I didn't do that prior to this, but it's something that I can take a look at to see how that's drafted and if there's certain things that we could tweak to try to address that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
But the rate that we charge, we try to recover all of his costs, vehicle,
The building fees.
building, yes. That we were charging Seaside. We had a relationship with Manzanita, which we don't no longer have. And we get help from other cities through interlocal agreements.
What kind of help?
Electrical is the one,
Electrical is done by the county.
right?
Um,
You can't do electrical inspections, so we have
Right.
to find somebody else.
I just haven't looked at the intergovernmental agreement that closely, so I can take a look at that as well and see what's
Appreciate
from
that.
perspective.
Thanks.
Question on the bank service charges in building fund.
I can speak to that, Stephen.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I thought maybe.
A lot of the building permits, if not all, are paid through Acela, which is a state-sponsored software program that we all pay fees to use. And they're kind of expensive. So that's the account that was chosen to house those costs.
Okay. Thank you.
part of the e-permitting system, correct?
Correct.
That makes sense.
Any other questions on building fund?
So back to our top 10 general fund revenue streams. Planning revenues would be the fees we charge relative to what? I'm sorry, I've just forgotten exactly.
Sure. Things like development permits, conditional use permits, a lot of our land use permitting fees.
Okay.
So that's what that refers to as.
And that is unrelated to the building funds or building permit fees.
Housing now?
Sure. Not much to report other than, one of the things that continues to occur is that we're having new dwellings that are being constructed, and as those permits are issued, that the building department, as far as the fees, collects those affordable housing fees. There's been a tremendous amount of discussion in terms of housing as part of the code audit and different things that are going on. And that the Sea Lark is probably the only project that we've used this for at this point in time. But should there ever come another project, there would be the ability to potentially get into an agreement with the developer to discuss how those funds could potentially be used to help incentivize a project for affordable housing. And so until that happens, we're going to continue to receive those and hopefully have the opportunity to use those at a time a project comes to us.
may have just said this with what you just said, but I'm gonna ask a question.
Yeah,
We're hopefully going to do some work on affordable housing. And we're gonna hire probably some consultants and outside vendors, NGOs that do this type of thing. Is that possible to pay that out of this fund?
again, I don't know the answer to that. I would probably work with our consultant a little bit, or our, like attorneys and probably Bruce a little bit, but I would think that if it was related to an affordable housing project, that we could probably use some of those dollars to help us in, you know, with a consultant to do that work. But I think it's specifically directed at a particular project. I don't think it is allowed for planning work trying to get affordable housing. I think it would have to be consultant work related to a specific affordable housing project.
Bruce, if we don't, I mean, on the assumption that we might try to do something on affordable housing in fiscal 25. Shouldn't there be some money somewhere for, you know, kind of consultants and lawyers and the things you have to do to get that ball rolling? If it isn't able to, I mean, maybe we should just ask that question more directly of Laura, you know, of whoever interprets what this fund can be used for.
I think that for us to do anything, there will be some assistance required. And we can make that happen if and when we get to the point that we know what it is we're trying to do. Or we could just put a placeholder in. But right now, it would be no more than a placeholder because we really don't have a plan.
Right.
So you can go either way.
Any other questions? On affordable housing.
I see, thanks.
Yeah, all right.
Steve?
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Oh, Kelly is up.
Page 32 in your.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Normally, I think I only say like 5 sentences total, but I'm in a really good mood today, so
Oh,
we're gonna take a little bit more of your time, but it'll be pretty quick. So I just want to say a few things about our program, a little bit in general, and some of the trends that we've seen over the past 4 years since I've been here. One thing I would like to point out is that funding education and conservation is the type of program that you really don't know it's working until it's gone. The effort, the amount of money and the time that goes into it, you don't see the ill effects unless it's not there. And we are currently celebrating our 39th year in operation. Next year is going to be 40 years since Neil Main established this. And currently, we also have the largest number of seasonal paid staff than we ever have had in the program's history. And we also have the most hours logged on the beach than we have ever had. And that is because we now operate from President's Day weekend in February through November. And just as a reminder, our mission is protecting through education, the intertidal and bird ecology of the Marine Garden and Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge at Haystack Rock. And we accomplish this, as you can see, looking at our budget, mostly by funding people. By seasonal staff and the personnel that is necessary to maintain our volunteer base and outreach coordination is the vast bulk of our budget up here. And it's no secret that tourism on the North Coast has drastically been on the rise. And that means visitations to Haystack Rock has also steadily increased with that. And with that increase is more risk of human trampling and potential damage being done to our ecosystem, which is a draw to this area. When people search Cannon Beach on Google, you're probably gonna get a picture of Haystack Rock. But I'm proud to report that due to our efforts of the hardworking staff and volunteers of our program, trampling has declined over 50% over the past 4 years. And on top of that, the statements of gratitude that we receive from visitors, this is saying, thanks, we appreciate you being here, we appreciate the education, we appreciate the signage, anything like that has gone up 35% in the same time frame. And what that translates to is 97% of people that we talk to on the beach tell us that they have some appreciation or a statement of gratitude for the education that they are being provided. And this is all despite the general numbers of visitors that we are getting at Haystack Rock increasing. And that's the main metric that I use for success of the program, is these interactions with people and the amount of trampling and damage that we have to inform people about technical etiquette and stop ahead of time. So for instance, just today, we had our lowest tide for this month, a negative 1.6. The cave and the needle, the first needle was all accessible and all exposed. We were out there for 6 hours and we had 0 incidences of anyone stepping on any of the marine garden rocks. We had no trampling over all of that. And over that time period, we talked to a total of 279 different individuals and we received 274 statements of gratitude. I missed one thank you and I give him a pass because it was a 3-year-old and he was very shy. So I have just endless stories of individuals telling every single one of my interpreters, the staff and the volunteers that they have made their day, they have made their trip, that they have given them something special, that they can't wait to share what they learned with other people, and that they've just personally touched them. And it's really huge that this is a city-funded program because you're not going to find this anywhere else. Everywhere else is going to be a nonprofit that spends the bulk amount of their time and their budget on fundraising to be able to do a program like this. And my team, they do this every single day, rain or shine. As early as 5:30, you're gonna see them out there, and as late as 9 p.m. at night. Sunrise to sunset, if you can see the typos out there, you're gonna be able to see the interpreters in their red jackets. So you can see on the budget that most of this is going to be funding for our staff there. I like to give them a competitive pay. The majority of the staff that I hire does have a bachelor's or a master's degree in marine science, environmental sciences, biology, or education. And they're on their feet all day with wet feet. I have some saltwater stains on my legs right now. And they're out there when there's 20-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And despite that, they keep showing up every day and they keep applying for this job and keep wanting to come back. And so I think that they really deserve a competitive pay for this type of field as we really shape the next generation of conservationists out here. And part of that, I think, is also how we've gained a reputation as being the gold standard program for interpretive and conservation on the North Coast. So you can also see, I won't go line by line, but I'm happy to take any questions. Down in the materials, we have a small change. Most notably is going to be, we're not funding the RV site or housing for just temporary. Sea Grant Scholar has had a drop down in their budget for the next couple years, and we're not going to be having a Sea Grant Scholar while we're doing the City Hall projects until we have the new building set up, and then we will bring those back. And then other anticipated budget changes would be related to grants that we receive. I don't anticipate getting those, oh, I hope to get those grants, but I don't put them in the budget until we actually get them, and then those would fund certain things like wheelchair primarily this year. Okay, I think that's all I have. If we have any questions about the budget, like, you know, catch me out in the typos if you have questions about wildlife.
The wheelchair expenses went down.
So that was we received a grant to get them. And so it actually went up from our baseline. So normally we've been doing $600 to maintain the wheelchairs, and that's the cost of replacement parts, new wheels, new bearings. And then we received a grant from ODOT for $5,000 to get a couple new chairs.
Okay.
And then I increased our baseline budget. That would be able to cover when we set up a app-based system for people to be able to check out the wheelchairs without the person having to be involved.
Thank you.
HDL insurance was a fairly large jump, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what HDL refers to.
That is the health insurance,
I had it, yeah.
Facility and
life.
something, yeah, okay.
And yes, you'll see that throughout the budget.
That's probably
Had a,
kind of
our largest increase in many years.
statement.
Yeah.
The statement, that number essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's some of the departments that went down.
Well, that'd be due to staffing. Her staffing is stable or increased.
My staff has stayed the same, but I mean, I had a baby and I had her through my insurance, so it's probably that.
Chunk of it is.
Yeah, so some of that is gonna be due to that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But our number of staff, our full-time staff for our department has stayed the same. So other than that, it's the general increase.
Any other questions for Kelly? Doing a great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Okay, I'll have to see the titles. Thank you.
Okay. Tracy?
Here, I do not see Tracy here. She's not here. She is here. Okay, she's just,
Can we take a 2-minute bathroom break?
What about that?
Oh, no, that's what I'm supposed to ask you. Can I take a break?
Yes, yes, we'll take an 8-minute.
I think
Hey,
baked pork tenderloin.
Tracy. Hi, Tracy. Would you like to present your program?
Okay,
Budget?
sure. So I haven't done this before. This will be my first time. So I am just going to kind of go, I mean, what best?
Probably your highlights.
Okay,
Yeah, because there's a big change in one of the line items.
okay.
Just, you don't have to go through
yeah,
everything.
you're pretty consistent.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah, you're just
You've
pretty
got
much.
$614 to start.
I'll explain it right now. So it's gonna actually be very easy. I went down a little bit with our phone because we got a grant. I got a grant from Double Up Food Bucks. So we're going to be able to actually process SNAP and Double Up Food Bucks down at the market instead of having people come up to City Hall, which I think is a really great thing. It's a boundary, I think, a barrier, I guess is more of a better term. People having to leave the market. So this way we're going to be able to process that. So that went down a little bit, but where the expenses went up a little bit is mostly just because costs have gone up. So I added more to our bags. I added more to our hats. And I added more to entertainment. So the bags and the hats, those are just because the costs of purchasing those have gone up. And then the entertainment, I looked at the other markets and what they were paying their musicians. And so we were a little bit lower. And so I just wanted to bring it up a little bit because some of our musicians have more than just 1 or 2 people. We're talking 4 to 5 people. So to split $50 is sort of, you know, not really worth it. And I went up a little bit in advertising. We only really had enough money in the advertising budget for one ad in the Cannon Beach magazine. And we wanted to do a joint farmer's market advertising, and I wasn't ever able to contribute to that because we just didn't have it. So that is where I've gone up.
I noticed you didn't go up in t-shirts and last year you ran out of t-shirts. And you don't want to buy more? Because it seems like you really sell them. They're so pretty.
Yeah. Well, we ended up buying some at the end of the market, and so I do have some left over. And then I've just been kind of trying to, we just did inventory. And the need really is actually in the sweatshirts, but I think what we had budgeted, we will still have enough to be able to get those. So, yeah, we have, the t-shirts is a tricky one because it's odd sizes, odd colors. And I'm just trying to get a handle on that, but we still have enough to sell.
Okay.
I don't see anything in here for hoodies.
For what?
For hoodies.
Goodies?
Hoodies.
Hoodies. I didn't go up.
Okay. Because those proved to be very popular, especially at the beginning of the market when.
Yeah, and smaller sizes is what I had heard too, so. yeah, I think we'll still have enough.
Okay.
To do that because I do have some leftover. I mean, if you want to give me more money, I can.
You know what, I'm just wondering, how many weeks do you have of musicians?
Yeah, so we've actually shortened this season to, I believe it's 13 weeks. I think last year it was 16, although we missed 2. And so our income is going to be a little bit less because we lowered the price for the vendors because we are shortening the season, and that's due to probably the construction. But I think I have sold out of all of our booths right now. It's just, we didn't want to run into construction issues, and we thought these work weeks would work without being super disruptive.
So if you have 4 musicians come to play for one market, they still get the same amount of money, or do you pay? So what?
Yeah, per person. So.
Oh, per person. Oh, okay. I thought, okay. All right.
So if it's 2 people, I believe it's, I'd have to look. I think it's 175, and then 4 people, it was 200, and I have one group that they wanted to up it to 300, and I said, yeah, we should be able to do that because of Dave Quinton's band.
Oh, yeah. And that really is.
And I have sponsors. I already have commitments from several people who said they'll sponsor it too.
Oh, that's great. That's a great
So
idea.
that should even offset more if
Yeah, that's great.
I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and the other thing is we did change the time to 12 to 4. And that was so we could deal with the parking issue. So we are able to use the Legion for our vendors and our musicians to park.
Oh,
so
it's good.
Yeah. And then I also, which I think it didn't need to be in this budget, but we're going to put out some signs for parking for 30 minutes for farmers market only. And we're just going to really push the locals on that so that they know that, they can zip in and zip out. Because that was one complaint we got a lot of, is there just wasn't any parking for somebody that lives here to be able to.
Yeah.
As far as policing it, that's another story, but we're just kind of more using it sort of like the 15-minute parking that we have. It's kind of an honor system, but we thought at least if we could get people aware that that's what we're trying to do, it might help bring in some more locals.
I have a budget question.
Oh,
okay.
Killjoy.
So last year it was 0.41 FTE. This year it's 0.49, but the employee personnel services numbers don't change at all.
Well,
I think I can speak to that. I think prior it was a salaried position. Now it's an hourly position, so that tweaked the FTEs a little bit. But there was also a belief, and I don't know if a correlation ever made between the two, that it would come out about the same.
Okay,
So
I'll take that. Thank you.
I confused myself, so I'm glad you. I'm speaking for Lori in this instance, but I think that's what I understood her to say.
Tracy, when you have farmer's market expenses, just $900, are those miscellaneous type?
yeah, so I bought new bins. Our bins were broken.
Okay.
I also will use that. We're gonna have a kind of a vendor volunteer appreciation at the end of the market. So I'll use some of the funds for that. We did a taco.
That makes sense.
So that,
Thank you.
Are you still gonna have volunteer parking up here at least until
Legion.
Legion?
This will probably be torn up. So we're not counting on having any of this for parking. And so that is where some of our volunteers, the early volunteers probably might have an easier time still finding some things. But again, we have the entire Legion parking lot. And most of our vendors, except a few, will park behind. So the volunteers we should be fine for volunteer.
But if someone was early, they could park up here until like September at least.
Yeah, if it's open, we absolutely use it. We just wanted to sort of be a little bit proactive in case it was, this wasn't available to.
So there's a chance that until construction starts, you will be able to rope this off for volunteer parking?
If the construction, yeah, if it's available,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's just kind of an unknown right now. We don't really.
Okay, good.
Okay, any other questions for Tracy?
No, great, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trey.
Hey, Sharon, we skipped 32. That's the one I referred to at the very beginning. That's another Karen kind of floating there by itself.
Yes.
So I'll pick up with 33. Talk about some of these funds that really don't fall specifically under the purview of any particular department head. They're more kind of a combination of executive or finance. And I'm going to move.
Page number?
Oh, I beg your pardon. We're starting on 31.
Okay.
So stop me anytime because there's a lot of these. The first one is community programs. There's a couple of things. You'll see that the beach plastic remediation was moved into community grants, which is the first line. So that's 10,000 of the increase. The other 10,000 was requested because of the increased demand for those grants. We have, as we do every year, a letter in your packet from the Cannon Beach Library. There's no one here to speak to that, but it's usually very thorough. If anyone can look at that for any details of that program. Everything else the same. The shuttle subsidy is left in there under the assumption that maybe someday the transit district will come before us and say, hey, we're ready to maybe help you out with staffing a local transportation system for you. Didn't happen last year. Also, the public art project was increased by $25,000. I think that came from Bruce for anticipating a need for CBE project.
Well, yeah, CB or the City Hall Police Station have public art.
Okay.
May I ask a question on the summer concerts? What specifically does that go to? Is that paying artists or?
Just the artists.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the expense.
How do we determine that? I mean, like the artists, the music fees on the farmer's market were really low. What are we paying artists for?
300.
Sorry, 300.
We paid 300 and then Paul does a good job going out and getting gratuities. And
Yes.
the two of those things combined, it's a pretty lucrative. And
This is all the Thursday program.
yeah,
And the other concerts in the park is a Tolban Arts Colony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Usually.
there's Colin.
Yeah.
But in Paul's opinion, we're able to get even some better this year because we went from, I think, 250 to 300.
One of the nicest things I think we do.
I love that.
Yeah. I do too.
Remember, I was sitting there one time and it was,
I would pay more.
yeah,
Helps.
yeah. Well, no, it was people playing pickleball, it was kids riding on skateboards, it was people kicking a soccer ball, and it was music, like small town, you know?
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And you know what helps is when they're tipped well,
Yeah.
that,
And Paul is really effective.
yeah, that's right. They're always at someone's car. But if you tip well, then they're willing to come back for the smaller.
Yeah. We've made it more lucrative to on what your base is going to be. And like I said, we were able to get some people to come from Portland now.
Yeah. It's just one of the best things that happens in the summertime.
I love that program.
Can you explain a little more about the public art project? You said that's for the CBE and the police and fire.
That's what I'm seeing it right now. It's been funded at $25,000. There was a committee. The committee is pretty much disbanded.
Yeah, I know about that, but I don't understand why we have money for the police department and city hall and CBE when we haven't even constructed them yet. So,
This would be, because you sometimes commission stuff in advance. And so I see this being funded over 2 years at 50,000 a year for, everything to come together at the end of 25.
okay.
So it'll be over 2 fiscal years
So this is art for putting inside the
or outside,
buildings.
inside, outside.
Okay.
But I just seems that the community wants to have public art in the buildings.
And this is not a state requirement. This is not art, 1% art or anything.
The Tourism and Arts Commission also looks at opportunities for public
Yeah.
conversations we've had.
Anything else on community programs?
I have a question. The community grants. I think at our March meeting, I mentioned that, you know, it had been at 90,000 for 10 years or so. And the 10,000 is a start, but you know, even though Karen's not here to talk about it, there's going to be money that was set aside for her Midtown that's going to be now provided by the TAC committee, I believe. And then, anyway, so there's going to be some other money, leftover money from there. And, you know, the asks that this committee gets are important. They're services that are really needed. And I think that Cannon Beach probably has the most money that should be available for things like that, the women's shelter, the abuse, the, you know, different things like that, the serious stuff, not just a piece of art, but serious stuff. And I'm going to be bold here, and I would like to see $50,000 added instead of just 10. I think that's 20. Well, but the 10 of it was for the sea turtle thing.
No guarantee it's going to the.
Turtle, I know, it's not guaranteed, but I mean, if, you know, people are going to think that, and include that. Okay, so 20, I'd like to see another 30 added to this. And because of, I think that we could pull that extra money from what we're saving on the restroom project. And
It would be a different source.
pardon me?
This is Parks, this is one the Parks does, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Then, and that one is funded from general fund. There's the TAC fund, which gets 1%. So
Right, but this
this is not the TAC. I don't
the different, no, this is just leftover money that is now not needed because of Karen's grant, I guess, from the TAC.
It sounded like TAC was going to fund the restroom project completely, which was 470,000.
And in.
So that
Karen's
came out of the
budget,
general fund as Sharon.
There's zero, and she took the 250 whatever out of, that was in there for last year. It's zero because of, so of that money, I think it would just be, and it's a very, you know, it would be a very feel good to the community during these tumultuous times to add to our giving back.
Sure. That's
It's
just,
just my opinion. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I just feel like, you know, because the 90,000 has been for so long and, and yet the people that are asking for those grants, all of their costs have gone up.
Mhm.
And so even though they might get a certain amount, it's not fulfilling as much as it used to. And so if they could get a little bit more.
I don't know, and maybe you do, sounds like you might, what percentage of requests do we fund? In other words, are we getting $500,000 of requests and we are only funding?
I think if we look at the parks packet,
I know you've worked on that. I've not worked on it. I've watched it and I read about it and stuff, but.
Significantly
has been
more.
involved in
Requests.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
we've got,
It's,
at least,
it's like,
get the figures.
yeah.
got our best mind.
It's a lot.
I know.
And then
Jennifer's looking for it.
Okay, so the requests, because they're in the grant cycle right now, they just did their interviews today. And they received 18 requests with a total of $163,000 being requested. And then let me just give you last year's, just so you have comparison.
And the budget was 90.
It was 90.
Yeah,
It was 75 forever and then it went up to 90.
so last year's request was 16 applicants with a request of 189,000.
So it's actually, the request has actually gone down. The amount of requested has gone down.
It did go down this year, which I want to say most years it kind of stays similar because you have a lot of the same people. But every year's different, you just never quite get. But the requests have always, since I've been here, has always exceeded the grant amount.
I think that is a great program and usually very worthy causes. I'm a little uncomfortable tying it to the one time we saved the money with tax.
I mean,
I'd like to see something be sustainable where it could be
Right.
increased and be.
and I think it can be, our budget, our income, you know, certainly has room for that.
We have,
When you think about it, our income,
I'd like to see that too. I agree with you. I think that's a really good
So
idea.
the motion you would make is to increase that to say 140,
yes,
and that would probably fund, at least relative to this year, 85.
this year, it sounds like
85%.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty unheard of.
Kind of like the committee making tough choices too.
It's
Not
really,
just say, oh, we got the money, let's fund everybody
Right.
100%.
Right. And then next year, people, oh, well, they got more money, let's do this, and, and we'll get, we're gonna get, more. So then we're back to, and it's, I don't think anybody expects their full ask. They know the program. But to get a little bit more, and like I say, it just,
Yeah.
it costs these nonprofits more and more every year to
Yeah, in a lot
work.
of ways, these are things that could be services that third-party NGOs are taking care of for us.
Yeah,
I support that idea.
yes,
140.
140 would be my hope.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm on for that.
where you say.
Is that
a motion?
consensus?
Pardon me?
consensus.
This is where you say, is that a motion?
I don't think we're making motions right now.
On
It's
the,
consensus, I think.
No,
Do it until after.
yeah, we're not doing motions, we're just
All right,
Kind of-
consensus.
just consensus.
Don't we do motions at the very end when we
Yeah.
pass the budget? Then we have motions on all
With
this
the
stuff.
changes.
We've agreed, let's go.
I do have,
Mayor.
I do have a question. I do have a question about,
Oh.
I hate to bring this up. Gee, I hate to bring this up.
They have applied for a community grant.
Okay, they have.
Yes.
All right, we are not going to make it a line item and,
No.
No,
I think that's,
It is not in this budget.
okay, that's just fine.
Okay, but it should be.
Trained.
That's right.
No,
Yeah, and he did
totally agree.
He did apply for a good deal.
yeah.
Okay, next.
Um,
Well, you're talking for me, you know, yeah. You represent me. No, no, I totally agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Next, page 34, municipal court. Not a lot of changes here at all. The only thing that has changed is the entry level for this position was raised in the union scale in order to attract and retain people. That's it.
Okay,
There's no questions. We'll go to page 53. Tourism and Arts Fund. This is the event. For half, 70% of the 1%. And the methodology, as I said earlier, in the general fund is a 3% increase from the actual 2022, 2023 levels. All of this in these budgets historically and this year, it's everything that's brought in is anticipated as being spent on a TAF, which does not happen usually. But that's the way the budget is. Any balances are just listed as a general tourist related purpose. And in this case, that balance is reduced by the Midtown restroom rebuild because council authorized the construction costs of that tourist related facility to be paid for with these funds. So it's in this under capital outlay. Any questions on the TAF fund?
I don't know if you just said this, but the TAF award at 523,863. Since what?
That is the, it's assumed to be the total tax
Amount that they owe.
is coming in. So it's the combination, no, I'm sorry, it's the combination of the motel and short-term rental taxes up above the 465 and the 58. So these budgets always assume that everything you bring in taxes, you will spend on that TAF award. And as I said, that doesn't usually,
But the tourism purpose.
that's part of fund balance. That's just, this assumes every year that you're spending everything that's in the fund. It's always been that way. So whatever isn't,
It's always been assumed we'll spend all the funds.
You don't. Exactly. That's what the point I was making. So normally that tourism purpose number would just be the fund balance, the 1.08 million, but it's reduced by the Midtown restroom rebuild. So this is as a result of council recognizing that we use these funds on legitimate tourist purposes because the fund is building up.
I'll be anxious to see what Tourism and Arts Commission comes up with. Joint conversation and
Great.
how they do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone good with that? Page 56. This is the goes back and forth. TRT and the TLT. I believe that our ordinance actually says TRT, but most people are calling it TLT. So sorry for the confusion. That's why it says TRT.
Trying to retrain myself, but I always call it TLT.
Yeah. Anyway, this is 70% of the other 1%. Can't remember the years now, 2016, I believe. So this is traditionally Chamber of Commerce related. So again, it's assumed here that everything that is raised goes into tourism promotions / chamber. Again, I'm not sure that I always get every penny of this, but I'm not exactly sure of how they're awarded money and.
My understanding is they do.
They do get,
Yeah, I think you're right.
We're going to be evaluating.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope so.
obviously, another increase of
Yeah,
over $50,000.
100,000.
Yep. So that's a good side discussion for this fund, definitely. And
This does not commit us to funding the chamber with that money.
We have a contract that says they will get 70% of the 1%.
That's what commits us.
That's what,
Yeah.
but that's also, it's relatively possible to change
it
that.
can be changed.
Isn't that up for renewal really soon? No,
Rules.
is it renewed?
So it's the ongoing, it doesn't have a renewal.
Cancelable pretty.
Yes, it's relatively easy, 90 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming that is on our agenda in the future to assess that.
You just tell us what's on the agenda and it'll.
Didn't telling.
We did, yeah, we
No, it's-
we want the I wanted to see the contract as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Been asking for it for a couple of years now.
I mean, that could easily be an annual appropriation rather than a mechanistic
Mhm.
approach.
Right. One of the things in the past, for what it's worth, they made the chamber do an accounting, accurate accounting of what the information center costs. And that is the amount that they were funded with a little bit of cushion. And the city chose to fund that. So anything else left over was available for other things. Page 58, is the fund that houses the fairly new 1.5% increase. And there's a little fund balance because the tax came on kind of midway point and we haven't started using it for its intended purpose, which is of course to support the CBE bond payments. So we're anticipating this amount based on the same methodology. And you can see the bond payments, which are based on the most current estimate for that. And also there is a 15% contingency applied here, which I think would kind of tag on to the same question of why is that there? So we'll ask. Anything else on this? Let's see.
Ron,
Yeah,
this line is the one from the county.
no, this is the new,
New.
the increase from 8 to 9.5. Yeah,
And the one from the county, is that just put in?
getting there, I think.
Next.
Yes, that's next. Very well anticipated, Brandon.
Just,
Good job, Brandon.
Yeah.
The contingency there, again, give me an idea what a contingent expense might be.
Yeah, and as I said, we'll tack that on to the same question as before for that, because it applies here, same question.
Okay.
In my mind, it applies here as well.
Kind
Why?
of thinking it's a contingency based on revenues not meeting.
Well, we know, yeah, I mean, that's presumably that's it. But I think the goal here is to always get in all of these funds is the resources equal the so I think in this case, it's just a plug. You know, it's call it a cushion. We're gonna collect that more tax than our bond payments are gonna be. So since the methodology is to assume everything's spent, it's going into a contingency. However, it's 15%, so I don't know how that's. I'm gonna have to ask. It goes back to the same answer. I'll have to ask. I'm not sure. Page 61 is county tax. The county collects and remits 70% to us. This has also grown a reserve over the years. And the difference this year, I think, is Bruce had asked that we put in correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, but an estimated wage for director for CBE, initially getting started and kind of talking about what might need to happen there as far as that being a city-run program.
Correct.
I do not know what the capital expenditure is. I can't imagine, you know, Bruce, what that $5,000 is in this fund. I didn't ask Lori that. I didn't really notice it.
I don't know what it would be.
So I'm gonna have to. Anyone wants to know, I kind of do. I don't know what it is. And of course, this just pays the on payments and again, has the same contingency question. Bruce?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that money, 5,000 was spent on some?
I believe it was a just in case number,
Oh, okay.
because if we didn't have something budgeted, we wouldn't have anything to spend.
Yeah, if you look at it, just like the director, say there's something that goes along with that director, like, oh, they need a laptop. I mean, I think it was just like, don't know, we'll call one of them wages and the rest is, I don't know. So it's 10%. But now that you said it, that is exactly what it is. Any questions on the county? Chief, is that all making sense? Okay. Hearing none, page 70. This is the prepared food sales tax fund. We don't have as much history, obviously, in this fund as we do with transient lodging taxes, so they've become pretty predictable to anticipate what they'll be because the supply is fairly stable in town. And we just know there's growth in rate and occupancy a little bit, but not much because rates or occupancy is pretty stable as well. This one's a little more difficult because restaurants come and go. It's a little more volatile. Pricing models are different. So we'll have to kind of build a history. But this budget was generated based on the history that we have, even though it's not a lot, it's some. So I think there's some sound methodology here. Half of this, as you know, goes to the fire district as part of this agreement. And it is also meant to pay, be a source for paying the bonds that haven't been issued yet for City Hall and the police station. So those are in here anticipating that we will be paying those in this fiscal year budget. And they're based on the most recent estimate from the bond counselor. So that is, and there's also the same 15% contingency question here, which we'll get clarity around.
This also would be a candidate, just like the RV park. And this is a fundamental ongoing part of our revenue stream. You know, just for clarity, we may be out to make it the number 2 revenue source. And listed there. I understand we haven't done that on fund transfer type of accounts.
Well, this is not included because it's not a general fund. I mean, it's not considered, she excluded general fund and transfers, right?
So why is
It's all dedicated.
It's in its own fund, so it was designated for the purpose of paying for those bond measures for those 2 projects and emergency management. Am I correct in that, Bruce? They tacked on emergency management as well for some reason at the time. So those are its purposes.
Fire district, fire district, yeah.
Fire department, but any balance, I think, also could be for emergency management.
I think so.
Is that right, Jen?
Yes, it's the prepared food tax is to be spent on the City Hall, police station. It can also be used for emergency services and infrastructure. But the primary use was the City Hall and police station.
And that's referring to just our 50%.
Now it's a valid question.
Okay.
Half of it, that's assuming half of it goes away automatically and the rest is currently restricted to those.
Does the city get a small portion?
So it's really,
The fire district share?
5%.
yes, we get an admin fee of 5.
That represent,
And we've got some people that need to leave. Can we continue this? Because I have a lot of.
Absolutely.
To and start our next week's meeting with this, and then we'll jump to Karen or
Sure.
you.
So do you want to revisit the prepared?
I would like to, yes, because I've got questions and stuff too. I think it's
Good call.
gonna be a little discussion on this particular
Absolutely.
count. So, but, yeah, we need to let people, or till we have any, like, we go to the order.
Yeah. That's what
I didn't lock my bottom. Does anyone have any good of the order? No, okay, so we'll be back here 1 o'clock next Thursday. Questions in your pockets?
If you have questions and you want to send us an email before, we can try to research it.
Point, yeah. Okay, meeting adjourned.